Hello, my friend. Today, I want to sit with you for a little while. Not to explain anything lofty or complicated, but simply to reflect with you on something very simple, yet powerful enough to change the way you see your entire life. Letting go is how you learn to trust in karma. I know. Letting go sounds easy to say, but living it, that's a much longer journey. Especially for people like you and me who have been through many ups and downs in life. We've tried so hard, tried to hold our families together, tried to keep a job, our reputation, even tried to hold on to things that deep in our hearts we already knew were no longer ours to hold. And then, when someone says, "You need to let it go," it's easy to push back, isn't it? We think, if I don't hold on, who will? If I stop trying, won't everything fall apart? But dear friend, in Buddhism, letting go is not avoidance, and it's not laziness. Letting go is an act of deep trust in the law of karma that we can only control what truly belongs to us, our mind, our actions, the seeds we choose to plant. And the fruit, that belongs to time, to conditions, and to causes beyond our reach. I once met a woman in her early 60s after a Dharma talk in Northern California. She approached me with tearful eyes and quietly asked, "Teacher, I've done everything I could, so why did he still leave me? I raised him alone. I gave up my youth for him. Have I not planted enough good karma?" I gently held her hand and said slowly, "You've already planted the seeds, and sometimes those seeds take a very long time to bloom. Not every season bears fruit. Sometimes you have to wait for the next season or even the next lifetime. Faith in karma is not blind faith that if I do good, everything will turn out well right away. The Buddha taught, when the seed is right and the conditions are right, the result will surely come, but only when the time is ripe. That's why letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of the need to force an outcome. Because if you keep clinging to what hasn't arrived yet, you'll miss what's already here. Have you ever planted a seed in the soil and then dug it up every day to see if it sprouted? Of course not. You plant it, water it, care for it, and then you let nature do the rest. Faith in karma works the same way. Letting go is how you say to life, "I've done my part, now I'll let life do its part." In the middle-length discourses, the Buddha said, "No act of goodness is ever lost, not even one as small as a speck of dust. What you've done from a sincere heart will never be meaningless. But if you demand to see results right away, all you'll receive is disappointment and doubt." When I was younger, I was just like everyone else. I wanted life to go according to my plans. I believed that if I practiced well, if I lived kindly, I could avoid suffering. But life doesn't work like a math problem. Sometimes you plant a seed, but the fruit only comes much later, or it comes in a form you don't recognize. It was only when I finally let go of the urge to see results immediately that I began to feel something new, a lightness, a spaciousness, and a grounded sense of peace from deep within. Dear friend, if your heart is heavy with something right now, a relationship, a career, an old dream you've held for too long, I invite you to ask yourself just one question. Am I still planting good seeds? Or am I only clinging to an outcome to avoid feeling like I've failed? And if the answer is, "I've done enough," then maybe it's time to let go. Not to give up, but to trust in the wisdom of karma. Because sometimes it's only when you release what no longer belongs to you that life can make space to give you what truly does. And here's the beautiful part. When you let go at the right time, you don't lose anything. Instead, you return to yourself more peaceful, more at ease, and closer to a deeper understanding. You don't have to control everything because karma is already doing its work. and it always will. There's something that's been quietly walking alongside us for a very long time. Sometimes so long that we don't even notice it anymore. Fear. I've met so many people in this life. Some are business owners, some are doctors, some are parents trying their best to hold everything together for their children. But no matter who they are or where they come from, I've noticed one thing they all share in common. Everyone carries a few fears inside. Some fear losing the ones they love. Some fear poverty, illness, loneliness. And many carry a quiet fear that they're simply not enough. Today, I want to share this with you gently. Fear is not the enemy, but it is a seed. And every time you leave it unexamined in your heart, you're watering it. You're helping it grow. In Buddhist teachings, the mind is compared to a field of soil. That soil doesn't discriminate. It doesn't care what kind of seed you plant. Love or anxiety, trust or doubt, it nourishes whatever you give it. If you plant fear, fear will grow. And if you keep looking at the world through the lens of fear, eventually, everything around you will become distorted by it. I once spoke with a young Buddhist practitioner who had gone through 3 breakups in 4 years. He looked down as he spoke, his voice heavy. "Master, why do I keep attracting people who end up leaving me? I'm starting to believe I'm just not good enough." I looked at him without rushing to answer. Then I asked, "Do you notice any patterns among those 3 people?" He paused, then whispered, "They all made me feel unworthy." You see, fear, when we don't recognize it, becomes a lens. You begin seeing your life, others, and even yourself through that lens. And everything gets colored by anxiety. You start acting as if your fear has already come true. You pull back. You doubt the kindness of others. You hesitate in front of new opportunities. And without realizing it, you begin walking straight toward the very thing you were trying to avoid. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, "The mind is the forerunner of all things. The mind is the master. The mind creates." Which means, the world you live in isn't only made up of what's happening outside. It's shaped by how you see it, what you believe about it, and how you react from within. If you feed fear every day, it becomes the filter for every experience. But if you face fear with mindfulness and compassion, you'll begin to see what's really underneath. A trembling child, simply longing to be seen and understood. Now, I'm not telling you to get rid of all fear, not at all. I'm just inviting you to ask yourself one small question. The next time fear rises up, is this fear helping me build peace or pulling me back into chaos? If you can pause just for a second to ask that question, then you're no longer its victim. You've become the witness. And that is the first step toward not watering the seed of fear any further. I know some fears are deeply tied to old wounds. The fear of abandonment, of not being loved, of failure. These don't come out of nowhere. They often grow from memories, from past experiences. But dear one, the past is only a part of you. It's not the whole of who you are. You don't have to live inside the same old story forever. So, if today you're carrying a fear, maybe fear of aging, fear of losing someone close, or fear that your life no longer holds meaning, I invite you to simply sit down, take a deep breath, and look at that fear the way you'd look at an old friend. Because once you stop running from it, fear loses its power. And you'll begin to realize you are not your fear. You are the one who's looking at it with mindfulness, with kindness, and with a quiet new faith that says, I have the right to plant new seeds in the soil of my mind. Seeds of awareness, of peace, of freedom. I don't know how life has been for you lately. Maybe you're trying to hold things together. A relationship that's been stretched too far. A situation that isn't going the way you hoped. Or maybe it's just that quiet feeling that everything is somehow slipping out of your control. If that's you, then today I want to share something deeply meaningful that Buddhism has taught me and so many others along this path. Life flows best when we learn to take a step back. I know, in a world that constantly tells us to hustle, to take charge, to stay in control, this can sound counterintuitive. From a young age, we're taught that success comes from being on top of things, never missing a beat, always staying ahead. But eventually, usually when we're tired enough, we begin to see the truth. The tighter we hold on, the more tangled things become. And strangely enough, it's in those rare moments when we let go a little, when we step back, that life begins to rearrange itself naturally. I remember a former student who came to me during a time of deep chaos. She had just lost her job. Her husband was filing for divorce, and she felt like everything was falling apart. As she sat across from me, the only thing she kept repeating was, "I can't let things spiral like this. I have to fix it. I have to get control. I need to pull everything back together." I looked into her worried eyes and gently asked, "If you've already done everything within your power, what's stopping you from letting go just a little so you can breathe?" She was silent. Then she burst into tears. The truth is, so many of us are like that. We're afraid that if we stop pushing, if we don't check that message 10 times, if we don't manage every single detail, everything will fall apart. But friend, some rivers only become clear when you stop stirring them. Some answers only appear when the mind is still. And some doors only open not when you push harder, but when you take a step back and let the wind do the work. In Buddhist teachings, there's a beautiful image. A river doesn't need you to draw it, a map, it finds its own way. Just like that, life has a wisdom of its own. And every time you stop interfering with fear and expectation, you allow that wisdom to begin working. The Buddha taught, when the mind lets go, the truth reveals itself. When you stop forcing life to follow your script, you start seeing reality not as your emotions demand, but as it truly is. Now, I know, stepping back isn't easy, especially if you're used to carrying the weight, planning ahead, managing everything for everyone. But stepping back doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean being passive. It's an act of trust. Trusting karma, trusting cause and effect, trusting the quiet intelligence of life itself. Think for a moment. When was the last time you were pushing too hard? Maybe it was in a relationship you kept clinging to, even though your heart had already started to break. Or a decision you kept forcing yourself to make, even though deep down you weren't ready. And what happened? Usually, when we force things, life pushes back. But when we gently let go, surprisingly, the door doesn't slam shut. Sometimes, it opens on its own. And if it doesn't, maybe it was never your door to begin with. One of the greatest lessons I've learned through my practice is this. Not everything needs my intervention. Some things I just need to be present for and let time and karma do the rest. You don't have to direct every scene in the movie of your life. Some chapters only ask you to show up with patience, with faith, with a heart spacious enough to wait. The truth is, our urge to control usually comes from fear. Fear of loss, fear of getting it wrong, fear of being alone, fear of not being loved. And the more afraid we are, the tighter we cling. But the tighter we cling, the more we hurt what we're trying to protect. Have you ever tried holding a butterfly in your hand? If you grip too tightly, you'll harm it. But if you leave your hand open, it may fly away. Or it may choose to stay. That's freedom. And in freedom, there's real love. So if today you find yourself trying to control something, a relationship, an outcome, an image of who you think you need to be, I invite you to try stepping back. Just one step. And ask yourself, If I truly trust the flow of life, do I really need to hold on this tightly? Then take a deep breath, soften your shoulders, and let life take over. Because here's what I've come to learn. Life always knows the way. Sometimes it's just waiting for you to step aside, so it finally has space to move forward. Thank you for sitting with me in this moment of stillness. If anything I've shared has touched your heart, please share it in the comments below, because your step back today might just be the step forward someone else has been waiting for. I want to invite you to sit down with me, take a slow, deep breath, and reflect on something that I believe all of us at some point in our lives must eventually face: letting go. And no, I don't mean letting go as in giving up. I'm talking about a much deeper kind of maturity. The kind that only comes when you're brave enough to lay down something you once thought you couldn't live without. Have you ever felt that? Holding on to something for so long, a relationship, an old dream, a certain image of yourself, that you didn't even notice how much it was slowly shrinking your spirit, day by day? I once sat with a man in his early 50s. He had been a successful businessman, had a beautiful family, but then, after a financial collapse, he lost everything. When he came to see me, his eyes were hollow. He said, "I don't even know who I am anymore. Everything I thought defined me is gone." I looked at him gently and asked, "Have you ever considered that maybe losing everything is giving you the chance to begin again, this time from who you truly are?" He said nothing. Then quietly, he began to cry. You see, we often think that growing up means adding more to our lives. More achievements, more roles, more praise. But in Buddhism, true growth is not about getting more, it's about learning how to let go. Letting go of expectations that no longer fit who we are. Letting go of outdated definitions of success or identity. Letting go of the need to always be right, to win, to control. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, letting go is the path to freedom. And that freedom, it's not about doing whatever we want. It's about not being tied down by what no longer serves us. I want you to imagine this. You're walking through a forest trail, carrying a heavy backpack. Inside are old stones, pieces of wood, worn-out belongings, each one symbolizing your fears, your regrets, your anger, and the pain you've never quite been able to forgive. You can keep walking this way, burdened and exhausted. Or you can stop, open that backpack, and gently lay one thing down. Just one. And instantly, you'll breathe a little easier. Your shoulders will feel lighter. Your steps more grounded. That's letting go. That's where real growth begins. An older Buddhist once told me, "The older I get, the less I feel I need to hold on to anything. I just want to live more lightly, love more rightly, and let the rest flow as it will." I smiled, because in that one sentence I saw a truly wise soul. You see, worry shrinks our dreams. Fear shrinks our hearts. And the tighter we grip everything, the less space there is to actually live. We end up planning every detail, yet never feeling truly alive. Modern neuroscience confirms this too. When the brain is overwhelmed with anxiety, creativity drops. Empathy fades. Even memory suffers. It's like trying to grow flowers in a garden full of weeds. Nothing new can thrive unless we clear some space. And here's the truth. Letting go is not weakness. It takes immense courage to face the emptiness that often follows when you finally set down the familiar. But it's in that empty space that something new can grow. Trust, wisdom, compassion. So if you're standing at a crossroads in life, and your heart feels heavy because you don't know whether to keep holding on or to let go. I won't pretend to have the right answer for you, but I invite you to ask yourself this. What I'm holding on to, does it still nourish me? Or is it only making me more tired? And if the answer is tired, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to let yourself grow in a new way. Not by clinging, but by releasing. Let go not because you're giving up, but because you're ready to live with more space, more lightness, more truth. And that might just be the most courageous thing you've ever done. Have you ever woken up in the morning, the sunlight soft and gentle, the air fresh and still, but somehow peace is nowhere to be found inside you? Nothing's really happened, yet your heart is racing. Your mind's spinning with thoughts like, what if tomorrow goes wrong? What if they don't reply? Or just that vague feeling that something isn't right. If you've ever felt that way, I want you to know you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not wrong for feeling that way. During early morning meditation sessions at the monastery, I often see that same look in the eyes of many elders. Silver-haired, weathered hands. Yet their hearts still carry a quiet restlessness. One elderly woman once held my hand and whispered, "Teacher, I'm 70 now, but my mind still worries. Worries about my children. Worries about my health. Even worries about things that haven't happened yet." I gently held her hand back and said, "That's because you're living in tomorrow, not today. Have you noticed that? Worry always belongs to the future. It's not about what's happening now. It's the stories our minds create. Vivid scenes that haven't actually happened, yet feel so real, we start reacting to them as if they had. The Buddha once said, "Do not chase after the past. Do not seek the future. Look deeply into the present moment. Here and now is where peace resides." Peace doesn't live in the past. It doesn't exist in your projections of the future. It only lives here in this breath, in this moment, in this exact now where there's nothing to resist. Let me offer you an image. Imagine standing in the middle of a river, cool water rushing around your feet. In each hand, you're holding a suitcase, one labeled, "What's already happened," the other, "What might happen." You can't move forward, can you? Your hands are full. But if you set them both down, suddenly you feel light. You can breathe. You can hear the water. You might even smile. You see, anxiety doesn't come from the present moment. It comes from unhealed memories and unclear fears. But the present, the true present, is always empty, always fresh. It carries no burden unless we bring it in. A young man once told me he couldn't meditate. He said, "Every time I close my eyes, my mind becomes a movie theater. Work, family, all kinds of scenes playing non-stop." I smiled and replied, "That's exactly why you need to meditate. Because the present moment is the only place you can turn that screen off." Now, I'm not saying it's easy. Mindfulness, returning to the present, isn't something you do once and then you're done. It's like driving a car and gently adjusting the wheel when you drift off course. You don't yell at yourself. You don't beat yourself up. You just come back softly, gently. And the beautiful part is, every time you return to now, every time you place your hand on your chest and realize you're breathing, you break the cycle of anxiety. You're no longer stuck in tomorrow. You're no longer pulled by those endless what-ifs. Modern science confirms this too. Neuroscientific studies show that when you're grounded in the present, through your breath, through sound, through slow movement, your brain releases chemicals that calm your nervous system. reduce stress, and increase your sense of connection and clarity. So you see, peace doesn't come from fixing everything out there. It comes from being fully here with you. And if today you're feeling worried about your health, your loved ones, your future, I invite you to try just one thing. Place your hand over your heart, close your eyes, and ask, right now, in this very moment, is anything truly wrong? Most of the time, you'll realize, number, you're breathing, your heart is beating, no one is yelling at you, nothing is urgent, everything is calm, and you deserve to rest in that calm, not because you've done everything right, not because life is perfect, but simply because you're alive. I know there are topics that aren't easy to touch, especially when they involve our own sense of self. But today, I'd like to invite you to sit with me gently, sincerely, and reflect on something deeply rooted in Buddhist teachings for over 2,500 years. Attachment to the ego is the root of suffering and the very reason we can't let go. Have you ever noticed? Whenever you feel offended, disrespected, betrayed, or abandoned, what part of you reacts the most? It's not your heart. It's your ego. I once spoke with a woman in her 62nd, tired eyes, worn down after a long, painful divorce. She said to me, "I don't know why I'm still hurting so much. I don't want to go back. I know he's no longer meant for me. But deep down, I feel insulted, rejected, like I'm not enough." I looked at her and said softly, "You're not hurting because you lost a person. You're hurting because your ego can't accept that things didn't go your way." And that's something many of us experience. When life doesn't go how we want, we get angry. When someone doesn't treat us how we hoped, we feel let down. When a door closes, we feel betrayed. But the real pain doesn't come from the situation. It comes from the ego feeling bruised. The Buddha called this attachment to self. The clinging to ideas like, "I must be seen this way. I deserve this outcome. Others should understand and treat me like this." And because of that attachment, we keep trying to control everything. People, outcomes, timing, even our own emotions. Have you ever been there? You know you should let go, but inside, you're still holding tight. You know you should forgive, but your ego whispers, "Not until they apologize first." I get it. I've been there too. In my own journey of practice, I've come to see that our deepest suffering often doesn't come from others, but from our own clinging to a mental image of who we think we are. When someone praises me, I feel worthy. When someone criticizes me, I shrink. But then I realized, true worth doesn't come from what others say. It comes from no longer depending on the fragile existence of ego. In the Diamond Sutra, the Buddha taught, all appearances are illusory. If you see all appearances as not real, then you truly see the Tathagata. In simpler words, everything we cling to, titles, roles, self-image, is temporary. Only when we stop grasping at them can we see the deeper truth. So, how do we live that truth in everyday life? Try this. The next time you feel irritated, when someone cuts you off mid-sentence, when they don't acknowledge you the way you hoped, when plans fall through, pause and ask, what part of me feels hurt right now? Is it my ego being challenged? Once you recognize it, something shifts. You no longer need to react. You no longer have to protect your image. You can simply be there with honesty and humility. I once told a student, letting go of the ego doesn't mean disappearing. It means becoming a more harmonious part of the world. Not the center, not the controller, just one stream among many. You know, even modern psychology supports this. Studies show the more tightly you cling to your self-image, the more anxious, reactive, and fragile you become. But when you practice deep humility, when you stop needing to be right, to win, to stand out, your mind becomes lighter, freer, and happier. You don't need to be anyone. You just need to be right here, in this moment. No resistance, no mask. And that, my friend, is the first step toward freedom from suffering. So if today you find yourself resisting, refusing to accept something as it is, I invite you to take a deep breath and ask, am I in pain because my ego is trying to control what no longer belongs to me? If the answer is yes, then you've just touched the doorway to freedom. And I'll be here walking beside you on that path. Thank you for listening. If these words resonated with you, I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments below. Let's keep learning together. Not to become someone, but to come home to ourselves, free of ego, full of sincerity, and guided by awakened wisdom. I don't know what you might be struggling to hold on to today, but if something is weighing on you, I'd like to invite you to sit with me for a while, like two old friends, slowly sipping tea, and reflect on one of the great paradoxes that Buddhism has taught for over 2,500 years. True strength doesn't lie in holding on. It lies in the courage to let go. I know that might sound counterintuitive, especially in a world that constantly urges us. Hang in there. Don't give up. Stay in control. From the time we're young, we're taught to cling to things, our careers, our status, our relationships, and we're told that letting go is weakness. But as we get older, life has a way of gently turning that belief on its head. A woman in her 62nd once said to me, "I used to think letting go meant I failed, but I stayed in a broken marriage for nearly 10 years. Every morning felt like a battle inside me. It wasn't until I learned to let go that I could finally breathe again." Have you ever felt that way? Holding on to something not because it still serves you, but because you think you should, because it's your responsibility, your pride, your habit. But deep down, holding on is quietly draining you. In Buddhism, the act of letting go is called letting be, or non-attachment. It's not about giving up or being indifferent. It's a deep act of wisdom. You're not rejecting life. You're simply choosing to stop trying to force it into your expectations. And in that space, you begin to rediscover your real strength. Not in your muscles, not in your willpower, not in your ego, but in your softness, stillness, and your deep understanding of impermanence. Let me offer you an image. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you grip, the more it slips through your fingers. But when you open your hand, when you relax, the sand gently rests there. Life works the same way. Many people come to me and say, "I've done everything I could. I planned. I sacrificed. I gave it my all. Why is it still not working?" And I often tell them, you can plant the seed and water it, but you can't pull the tree out of the ground. Growth doesn't happen because you force it. It happens when you trust and let life unfold in its own time. The Buddha never told us to stop caring or acting. He simply taught us not to cling to the outcome. Put your heart into what you do, then step back. Let the wind blow. Let karma move. That is strength. Not in control, but in trust. There's a passage from the middle-length discourses that I always carry with me. No one can step into the same river twice, for the water today is not the water of yesterday. In the same way, you can't hold on to things forever as they were. Everything changes, and real strength is moving with that change without losing yourself. I've met some of the strongest people in this world, and they aren't the ones who speak the loudest or make the fastest decisions. They're the ones who can sit in silence, step back with grace, and say, "That's enough," gently but firmly. They don't force. They don't cling. They don't try to win over others. They've simply learned how to stop fighting life. So I ask you, are you holding on too tightly to something? A relationship? An old identity? A dream that no longer fits the person you've become? Are you trying to control something your heart has quietly grown tired of? If so, maybe it's time to let go just a little. Not let go of responsibility, but let go of the expectation that things must turn out the way you planned. Because sometimes, only when you stop swimming against the current can the river carry you to where you truly need to be. And real strength, my friend, is when you can honestly say, "I've done my part. Now I let life do the rest." There's a simple truth, so close, yet so often forgotten in the rush of modern life. The more we try to control, the more we lose our sense of trust. I know. In today's world, control has almost become a way of life. We try to control everything: our schedules, our emotions, our children, and even things we can never truly hold, like the weather, death, or someone else's heart. I once sat with a woman in her early 62nd, a devoted mother. She told me how she carefully mapped out every stage of her son's life: what he should study, what job he should take, who he should love. She even planned when he should get married. But when he turned 30, he left and never came back. She sat in front of me, eyes full of heartbreak. "I did everything for him," she said, "all out of love. But now he says I controlled his whole life." I didn't judge her, because I understood. When we love deeply, the instinct to control sneaks in quietly. We fear something bad will happen. We don't want those we love to suffer. And without realizing it, we start trying to hold on to everything. But here's the thing, my friend. That's when we begin to lose trust. We drift away from faith in the law of cause and effect. We forget that each person has their own path, their own timing, and their own karma to live through. The Buddha taught, all things arise from conditions and cease when those conditions end. Nothing is truly within our complete control, not even our own bodies or minds, which are constantly changing. The tighter we grip, the more anxious we feel. The more we worry, the more we want to make sure things go our way. But this constant control, like an invisible net, only exhausts us, stifles others, and makes life feel rigid and dry. Let me offer you a picture. Imagine you're in a small boat, drifting down a river. If you try to paddle upstream, fearing you might go the wrong way, you'll wear yourself out. But if you learn to gently steer while trusting the current, you'll be carried exactly where you're meant to go. Not when you think it's time, but when life knows you're ready. Trust, in Buddhism, doesn't mean passively giving up. It means living mindfully. You give your best, then let go of the outcome, and allow life to take care of the rest. This trust doesn't come from wishful thinking. It comes from understanding that everything has its timing, and sometimes not getting what you wanted is life's quiet way of protecting you. I've seen people break down, not because they didn't try hard enough, but because they couldn't stand not being in control. They lived under the pressure of, "I need to be sure. I have to know. I must eliminate all risks." But the truth is, control doesn't make you safer. It only makes you more tired. I remember a student in one of our retreats saying, "Teacher, I plan every hour, every week, every month, but life always seems to go in a different direction. I've started thinking I'm a failure because nothing goes according to plan." I smiled gently and said, "You're not a failure. Life hasn't betrayed you. Life just refuses to live inside your hands. And that's what we must learn. Faith is the ability to step back and let life breathe. To understand that even silence from the universe is a form of arrangement. To realize that what we think is right may not be right in the greater unfolding of karma. If today you find yourself in a moment where things aren't going your way, a plan has stalled, someone isn't responding, a door hasn't opened, I invite you to pause, breathe slowly, and ask yourself, what am I trying to control? Instead of trusting it will come when it's time, maybe all that's needed is for you to loosen your grip just a little. Maybe life has been waiting for you to stop forcing, so it can flow where it's always meant to go. Maybe you don't need to know for sure in order to begin trusting. Because trust isn't about knowing what will happen. It's about being steady, even when you don't. Thank you for walking through these reflections with me. And if there's something inside you that feels tight with worry, write it down. Share it with me. Together, we can relearn the gentle art of letting go. And remember, faith doesn't live in your fists. It lives in the open hand, trusting that the river of life always knows its way home. Today, I'd like to invite you to sit down with me, not as teacher and student, but as two people who've lived through half a lifetime, to reflect on something we've all experienced, but rarely dare to name: imagined fears, and how they quietly drain the life out of us. I've met many people strong, kind, responsible, yet still weighed down by an invisible burden. Not because their lives are falling apart, but because their minds are constantly playing the same script. What if the worst happens? Have you ever felt that way? You wake up, the morning is peaceful, but your mind is already racing. What if something bad happens today? What if my child gets into an accident? What if the doctor gives me bad news? What if I fail? And strangely enough, most of those things never happen. I remember an elderly Buddhist practitioner who came to me after a retreat. She gently took my hand and said, "Teacher, I realized I've spent so many years living in fear that I forgot to truly live." I paused for a long moment, because I understood. Imagined fear is like a shadow. It's not a monster, but it always appears right in front of us, just big enough to make us shrink, step back, and eventually give up on things we truly want. The Buddha once said, "Suffering does not come from circumstances, but from how we think about those circumstances." You see, most fear doesn't come from what's real. It comes from an unobserved mind, like a playwright constantly crafting dramas, but forgetting that they have the power to stop the story at any time. A meditation teacher once said, "If you know it's just a rain shower, you won't carry an umbrella every day the sky is clear." But don't we often live as if the sky is always about to storm? Try to remember this. How many times have you feared something and it never happened? How many nights have you lost sleep over a conversation that turned out to be much easier than expected? And how many opportunities passed you by simply because you feared something that hadn't even happened? Now, I'm not saying fear is wrong. It's not. Fear is a natural part of being human. The problem is, when imagined fear becomes a lifestyle, when it starts leading your life, instead of you leading your mind. In Buddhism, there's a beautiful image. The mind is like the open sky, and fear is just a passing cloud. The cloud may come and go, but the sky remains vast, clear, and unshaken. You don't need to get rid of fear. You only need to recognize it. Name it, and gently ask, is this fear real, Or is it just a story I'm telling myself? Even modern science confirms this. Our brains are wired to prioritize survival over happiness. That means it will constantly warn us of potential threats, even when none exist. But here's the good news. You are not your brain. You are the one who observes it. And the older I get, the more I realize what wears us down most in life isn't reality. It's the endless imaginary futures we create and then believe in. I once had a student, a very talented man, but for years, he never launched a single project. Why? Because he said, "I'm afraid people will criticize me. I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid I'm not good enough." Eventually, I asked him just one question. Who told you those things? Other than yourself? Do you see? Imagined fears often wear the mask of logic, but underneath, they're just ghosts from the past or patterns we've never healed. If today you're living with a quiet anxiety, I'm not asking you to get rid of it. I'm only inviting you to sit with it. Take a deep breath and gently ask, am I truly living, or am I acting out a script in my head? You don't need a perfect solution. You just need a moment of true awareness, an honest look inward, a return to this present moment, the only place fear cannot survive. There are some truths in life we don't see with our eyes, but feel most clearly with our hearts. And today, I want to share one of those truths with you. Letting go isn't about losing. It's about opening the door for your intuition and inner wisdom to rise. Have you ever noticed that when you stop trying to control everything, stop overthinking, stop explaining so much, something strange and beautiful begins to happen? A quiet voice inside you begins to speak. So soft, so true, so clear. That's your intuition. It doesn't come from logic, but from a deeper place, a place untouched by worry, control, or the fear of failing. I once had a student, a highly successful entrepreneur, who came to me during a moment of deep confusion. His mind was racing with decisions. Where should I invest? When should I walk away? Who can I trust? He said to me, I used to trust myself, but lately, I can't seem to hear my own inner voice anymore. Everything feels foggy. So I asked him, when was the last time you sat still? Not to solve, not to achieve, but just to rest your mind? He paused, then quietly said, maybe a few years ago. You see, wisdom doesn't come from busyness. It comes from stillness. The Buddha once said, a calm mind is like a still lake. It reflects the whole sky. But if our inner lake is constantly stirred by thoughts, by expectations, by the pressure to get it right, how can the light of insight ever reflect clearly? Try imagining this. You're in a noisy room, television blaring, phones ringing, people talking, and somewhere, someone is gently calling your name. But you can't hear them, not because they aren't speaking, but because the noise around you is too loud. That's what happens with your inner wisdom. It's not gone, it's just waiting for you to quiet down. In Buddhism, we call this innate knowing, a kind of wisdom that doesn't come from books or teachers, but from within yourself. It appears not when you try harder to know, but when you allow yourself to stop, to soften, to become still. I remember an older practitioner who told me after a silent retreat, "Teacher, I never imagined that just sitting quietly, doing nothing, would help me see my own problems so clearly. I thought I was being mindful before, but I was just reacting out of habit." You know, we're so used to reacting the moment we feel something, to think fast, to act immediately, to do more when we feel uncertain. But there is another kind of strength, gentler, deeper, that arises when we pause for just one beat, when we soften one layer of willpower, when we take one small step back from all our striving. It's in that sacred pause that intuition speaks, not in overanalysis, not in complex plans, but in a soft, simple knowing, this is the right direction for me. And strangely, when you act from that place, everything feels lighter, more whole, and the results are often just right. I've lived long enough to know this. Not everything you hold on to is meant to be kept, and not everything you let go of is a loss. Sometimes it's only when you release that you begin to receive. Like when you stop pushing through the crowd, you finally see the path ahead. Like when you stop speaking, you actually start to hear. And like when you stop trying to understand, clarity begins to unfold on its own. So here's something I'd like you to try. Next time you feel overwhelmed, uncertain, or lost, instead of doing more, try doing less. Instead of thinking harder, try just sitting quietly. Instead of adding another layer of control, try softening one. Because maybe that space you create is the very space wisdom has been waiting for. Dear friend, if you're still here with me at this point, I believe there's something very beautiful within you. A part that wants to live more deeply, more consciously, more gently. And I'm truly grateful that you've chosen to walk this path with me. If today's message touched something in you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need a quiet breath of stillness, and subscribe to Buddhism Seed so we can continue this journey together, exploring the depth of the soul. And you know, I read every single comment you leave, because sometimes a few honest words from you can become a light for someone else. So if you feel called, I invite you to write down just one thing. What am I ready to let go of? So my inner space can welcome wisdom in. Thank you truly, from the bottom of my heart. And I hope to see you again, not just in the next video, but in every moment you choose to slow down, breathe deeper, and start trusting that quiet voice within you